Fellas, this issue is bodacious. That's all I need to say about this issue. Oh, it's so good. But this picks up with the current events of the aftermath of the finale of Volume 2, and we see these Cobra guys, which we saw last issue, and we see them all working, and we have one person sketching and the other making repairs to the his tank we saw last issue, which then we see Clayton, who is one of the Mars guys, says this is an abomination, which then we see Horton say stop your complaining. As we see in the next page, they have attached Starscream to the his tank. I repeat, they attached Starscream to a his tank, which looks insane. Like they made bro a full-on gun tank, which is it's insane. Anyways, we see Horton ask if the his tank failsafe is installed, which we see Clayton say yes it is, and we see Starscream see what they are talking about and just starts to freak out, asking them what have they done to him and telling them they have ruined his beautiful body. Which before Starscream starts to stomp on these Cobra guys, we see one of the Mars guys show Starscream a sketch of Starscream, telling him that they saved him and his legs were gone when they found him by the lava, which of course Starscream being Starscream tells them that sketch is all wrong and all of his proportions are completely off and to draw him again, which is just very on brand for the character. But we see that the remote they have lets Starscream move around, and he can also move around on his own, but mainly needs this remote control device. And we see this Mars group move him around with the device, and when Starscream is chasing them, he has a Optimus Prime deer moment, well, sort of, because he stops and sees a cat and says, "What is that?" and then goes on to say, "I must kill it," which again is very on brand for the character. But we see Raz come in and save her cat, but Raz's cat ends up biting Raz, which then Starscream starts to laugh and say, "I like this cat." And because of this whole action here, Starscream has calmed down a bit, telling Raz that he needs Energon, which then we see Horton tell Starscream that they're happy to help and get what Starscream needs, which then we see on the next page Starscream grabbing and telling Horton that he needs no one's help, which then Horton tells him to act more careful if he was him, because they have rigged explosives to Starscream and the his tank, which then we see these two are at an impasse, and Starscream tells him well played, which then we see these two discuss what they both want. As for Horton, he basically wants power and to be in charge, and tells Starscream that if his superiors at Mars would be very happy to see a weapon of his size and cunning, and that they could do great things together, which then Starscream tells Horton that how fortunate it is to see someone else who shares a similar goal, and says to himself he has been looking for the right fleshling to partner with, and that's exactly what we see, as for the time being they have made some type of truce and are willing to work together. But they hear some type of screaming by them, which then they go and check it out, but we get hit with another flashback of Starscream's time on Cybertron. And this whole sequence here is crazy, like I'm not gonna lie to you, but we see Megatron and Starscream blasting at Autobots, and we see Megatron talking to the imprisoned Autobots and tells them, "I must give you Autobots credit, you are valiant warriors, one that I can use in the war to save our home if you vow to take up the Decepticon cause. I will have mercy on you, you will turn from my enemy into my kin. What say you?" Which then we see the imprisoned Autobots say no to the tyrant leader, which then Megatron forces Starscream's hand here as Megatron transforms into his gun mode and tells Starscream to take him and do what must be done, which then Starscream says he can't, and that they are prisoners of war, which then Megatron tells him that he knows the limits of his power and that someone must wield them, and that someone is Starscream. And we see in the next page that Starscream is having trouble with the ideals of a Decepticon, but Megatron tells him to do this and that it's better this way, and tells Starscream what you desire matters not, and you are mine now, and tells him to obey his command, which Starscream does, and shoots one of the imprisoned Autobots, completely destroying him, which we see the other imprisoned Autobots start to freak out, and with a scared look, Starscream tells the Autobots he is sorry, but Megatron reassures him, telling him to not apologize for what is necessary from now on. And we see this really cool looking panel of Starscream's descent into becoming a full-on Decepticon, as at first he hated what he did, but over time he enjoyed it, and Megatron tells him, "You shall be my executioner, you shall be my hand of death, and together we will bring Cybertron back to its rightful and glorious place among the stars," which is just nuts, man. And does anyone else get the feeling that this Megatron is acting very similar to the Fall of Cybertron, War for Cybertron Megatron, which is just freaking cool if that's true, if they're taking inspiration from that? Anyways, we go back to the present and we find out that it's actually Astrotrain who was yelling, and we have this reunion of sorts with Starscream and Astrotrain. And when Starscream asks Astrotrain how he was set free from the Nemesis bridge, he tells him it was Soundwave who did it, which leaves Starscream a look of disgust, but still sets Astrotrain free from the chains. And Astrotrain tells Starscream that Soundwave promised him Megatron for joining his plan, which Starscream tells Astrotrain that it's all lies of what Soundwave told him. And Starscream, being his cunning self, tells Astrotrain that Soundwave lies with every sentence he spills from his faceplate, and tells Astrotrain that if he doubts what he is saying, look at what Soundwave did to him. And he continues to say to Astrotrain to join his side and let him have his true revenge, which of course Astrotrain agrees. And we see a huge part of Cybertron at the beach they are at, which of course is from the finale of Volume 2, and we see Astrotrain tell Starscream that much has happened and ask Starscream why he has partnered with the humans, which then we see them on the next page trying to escape from a huge tidal wave that's coming, and telling Starscream to leave the Mars group to the waters, but Horin overhears this and uses the remote control to bring Starscream back, which then we see Starscream yell at Horin to get him on that ship now, and that since this group saved Starscream, Starscream will return the favor and save them. Which, if you know Starscream, you know it's never the same thing. But we see on the next page, as they are escaping, Horin tells him to remember who's in charge, which then Starscream says and tells Horin he would never try to dare and do some type of funny business. But as they are moving out of the huge tidal wave that's incoming, they see Onslaught and Brawl, who were left behind, and they end up rescuing these two Combaticons, which makes sense because we didn't see them at all in the finale of Volume 2. Which, when Horin starts to ask what's going on and who are these two Decepticons that join them on the shuttle, Starscream asks Horin if the legend of the Combaticons never reached the hills of Earth, as they are best known for their passion and violence. And Horin tells Starscream that he never agreed to this and demands that him and his Mars group will be taken back to the surface, which we see Starscream with a smirk on his face tell Horin of course, and that they just need to make a quick pit stop. And with a wave of water hitting the shuttle, the Mars group flies around in the shuttle, dropping the device and Horin being knocked out. And after some time passes and being knocked out, Horin gets up and all he can hear is "All hail Starscream," and we see Starscream with Astrotrain and the remaining Combaticons, which is just amazing, dude. And this issue seems to remind me a lot of Starscream's Brigade from the G1 cartoon, which is just awesome that they are doing this type of plot point in this volume. But we see on the next page, as Horin is looking for the remote control device, Starscream tells the Combaticons that they need to focus on an evil that is growing in their ranks, and Soundwave must be stopped, which then we see Onslaught and Brawl bring up how he doesn't need to say any more, and goes to tell Starscream that Soundwave is a traitor, in which we see Horin interrupt this conversation, which Starscream tells Horin that it's best for this working relationship to be done and that they should part ways. And Horin tells Starscream that he's got a failsafe right here with the remote device, which then Starscream goes and says, "Go ahead and press the button," which Horin does, and we see that it isn't working, and Raz says sorry to the general, as Starscream promised to let them go if they pulled out the charges. And Horin, with a look of betrayal, we see Starscream immediately squash, just squish Private Raz, telling her thank you for the help. And with Horin and Clayton running, immediately Clayton is taken out by Starscream's null ray. And with Horin begging for his life, Starscream gets the remote control and tells Horin that you tried to make me a slave, which is unforgivable, and kills Horin right there, runs him over, and tells Private Martin to start sketching, and tells him that he will be the illustrator and witness to his great rise of power. And that's exactly what we see as he starts to sketch the treacherous Seeker, and we see Starscream tell Soundwave to prepare for himself, as the Earth will belong to him. And that's how this issue ends, fellas. And we are now witnessing the start of the Decepticon Civil War. As in the last volume, I really felt like the Decepticons were really ahead of the Autobots, but given now that a whole civil war is about to start with Starscream, the cons are only going to get weaker. So I'm really curious to know what the Autobots will plan for this. I also too think that this issue was a lot shorter and faster compared to the start of Volume 3, which was just a whole flashback issue. But I really did enjoy seeing Starscream go back to his treacherous, cunning self, where he tries to make a deal with people, and usually the people end up getting hurt or killed, as it's Starscream, man. He's always gonna do what benefits him the most, so it's not really shocking to see him completely dismantling the entire Mars group, except for Private Martin. I feel like Martin will probably be killed in the future as well, as he's just a sketch artist. I also too think it's cool that the cat ended up going to Starscream when he started to kill all of the Mars group except for Martin, But it's also like, I'm just gonna say this right here, right now. Hot take, dogs are better than cats because the cats trust Decepticons. Are you a cat owner? Well, you might be a Decepticon. I'm just kidding, but I would love to know your guys' thoughts on this issue, and if you guys are hyped to see what's going to come in Volume 3, as I know I am. But make sure you guys leave a like on the video and subscribe if you're new, and I will see you guys in the next one. Later.